Hey everybody, welcome back to Slavic Saturday, where we talk about Slavic history, mythology, and folklore. My name is Brendan Noble, author of the Frostmarked Chronicles, which is my fantasy series based on Slavic mythology. This week we're returning to demons in Slavic mythology with one that has many names throughout the different Slavic regions, but has also a major presence throughout world mythologies as well, and that is the Zmora, Mora, or Kikimora, which is the demon of nightmares and sleep or lack of sleep. Before I dive too far into the Zmora, though, I just wanted to make a note that if you are interested in that series, the Frostmarked Chronicles, and the first book, A Dagger in the Winds, the cover reveal will be coming soon, and if you're interested in keeping up updates, as well as receiving free ebook novellas of any side stories attached to the main series, you can click to join my newsletter down in the link below. It's a monthly newsletter and will not spam your inbox. But now, let's dive into talking more about this demon. So like I say in many of my videos, regionalization is a big factor when it comes to talking about Slavic mythology. There are three main regions of Slavic groups from back in the day to modern day as well, and that is the East Slavs, West Slavs, and South Slavs. So among the Western Slavs, the Zmora is often referred to as Zmora or a Mora, and among the South Slavs, it's often referred to as just the Mora, and among the East Slavs, it can be referred to a Mora, or very popularly, especially among Russians, is the Kikimora. And we're going to talk about some of these regionalizations and how they impact the perception of the Zmora in different regions. I'm going to refer to it as the Zmora because I tend to pick the Polish names for things for these videos just for consistency. So like I said, the Zmora has a big role. It appears both in Slavic mythology and mythology in general. If you look at its name, one of the specific versions of its name as Mare or Mora, you can see the reference to the fact nightmare. It has a part of that within the name. And that's because these demons are connected to sleep paralysis. And this is a condition that is actually a scientific accurately thing where people can wake up and be paralyzed while they're still laying in bed, and during the sleep paralysis, the brain often sometimes sees shadows or characters moving, and historically, we've interpreted that as coming up with different creatures that are thought to be the mythological connection to this event. And that is where this Mora comes from, as a demon that causes sleep paralysis by sitting upon the person's chest and then sucking the blood or the strength, depending on the myth, from the person, and while they're laying there unable to do anything about it. So there are different versions of this myth where sometimes the person is asleep and just having nightmares, and that's caused by the Zmora, and other times it is the sleep paralysis while the person is there. Again, this is a regional difference, and this demonic form of the Zmora appears mostly among West and South Slavs. We'll talk about the Eastern Kikimora in a minute. We're going to talk about the appearances a little bit later as well, but the demonic version of the Zmora is very frightening. It can appear as kind of a black blob or a vampire-like thing. And so the fact is, if you see this at night, you would be very scared of it. And this is why it was meant that there would be a lot of protective elements that we'll talk about later as well to try to stop the Zmora from coming to get you. Now, the Kikimora among the East Slavs has a little bit of a different perception. It can be this demonic type as well, but often is more of a spirit, which is a slightly different thing in Slavic mythology. While demons like the Zmora often are people who lived unnatural lives or in sinful ways or died unnaturally. The demonic version of the Zmora specifically was often considered to be a female, first of all, and would sometimes be the undead soul of a wicked woman who died, or the undead soul of a person, still often a woman, who died and was wronged in life, and so they come back to haunt the person that wronged them. There's also weird things like people with unibrows could be them, a woman whose husband was, or a woman who was betrothed to a man, but the man ended up wearing someone else, could become a Zmora. And then also the child of a pregnant woman who walked between two other pregnant women could also become a Zmora. It's kind of interesting how these tales come about in folklore, and that's some of the different ways. But this Kikimora is a independent spirit often among the East Slavs, it usually had this negative context as well, still connected to sleep paralysis and other things, but often it was also connected to abandoned houses and kind of fighting against, there was often a good spirit called the Domovoy or Domovik that would be the protector of many houses, and the Kikimora is the kind of the opposite of it, where it would haunt the houses. But if you treated the Kikimora well, gave it sacrifices and things, sometimes the Kikimora would just help around with house chores or things, according to some stories. So it's one of those things where often spirits sometimes have a good and bad context, while demons are almost always entirely negative. And outside of just sleep paralysis, the Zmora were often around at night. Like many demons, they were thought to be a night creature. And one of the other things they could do is impact horses and other cattle or livestock that are around the farms. Specifically with the horses, they were known to, after draining a person, ride their horse across the fields, draining the horse as well. And when the horse became too exhausted, they would bring it back to the stable. And sometimes the horse and the cattle or livestock or whatever would have a plague afflicted by them. And potentially this was another reason and a connection why people blamed the plague or why their livestock were sick on the fact that a Zmora visited. If you're someone that's watched a lot of these videos or knows about Slavic mythology, you might have also noticed a similarity in the name between Mora and Morana or Marzana, who is the goddess of winter, death, and pestilence in Slavic mythology. And that's because there is sometimes a connection here. Sometimes it depends on what the region is. Sometimes the Mora is kind of a servant of her or connected to her, or sometimes she is thought to be one of these creatures. And there's some overlap there, but it's an interesting connection between the demon and this goddess, and it comes across to the negativity of Marzana bringing death and winter, and the demon doing the same thing. So while there are regional differences when it comes to appearance as well, the appearance is often meant to be anything that's attached to someone's nightmare, but often more human-like. There could be a often black, dark-like figure with things streaming off of it. There could be either a dark void or a human-like form. It could be a vampiric figure or a zombie-like figure. Often things just sitting on the person's chest as the straining of the person occurs. There's also the element, though, of the fact that Zmora are like other demons and also gods in Slavic mythology, the fact that they are shapeshifters. So they can shapeshift into many different things that just adds complications to it. So they could be cats, martens, mice, and they could also transform into some inanimate objects that were sometimes also perceived with their appearance, such as straw or thread. But again, regardless of appearance, the Zmora was meant to be terrifying and attached to nightmares. Kikimoras specifically could sometimes have some of these other elements that the Zmora had, but they were often perceived as an older woman as well, kind of like a crone-like figure, and sometimes had attachments related to that as well. Now, because the Zmora is a dangerous creature that was thought to attack people and even be able to go through keyholes, you would need to come up with ways to protect yourself from this demon. And there are multiple ways to do it. First of all, the way to defeat the demon, if someone you know is being afflicted by one, is there was thought that you could take a open bottle, approach the person while they're sleeping and the Zmora's on top of them or whatever, and swipe the bottle across them, capturing the demon within it, and then covering it with your hand, and then throwing it into a fire, effectively burning the spirit and the demon into the flames. This could also, that doesn't necessarily stop it from originally happening, and some of the ways to do that are, sometimes you think that there'd be a distraction by placing straw in your bed that the Zmora will then think is you while you go sleep somewhere else. There's ideas such as putting a axe and a broom crossed on the threshold because of the house, because the threshold is often considered sometimes a protection element in Slavic mythology as well. You could also sleep with a scythe to attack it or protect yourself with it, or even sometimes a more odd one was nailing a bird of prey to the door of your house as well was thought to sometimes stop it. And finally, the most boring way is to change your sleep position, because it can't sleep on your chest if you're laying on your chest. So they would say sleep on your side or your chest to stop it from suffocating you, apparently. And another thing, though, just because you protect yourself doesn't mean the stables are protected. So there were more things to stop the Zmora from coming after the stables. Sometimes it was drawing a circle of chalk around the stables to apparently create a barrier that the Zmora couldn't cross. You could put foul-smelling things along a horse's back that apparently was supposed to stop and keep the demon away because it doesn't like the smell or something like that. And also, red ribbons are a popular thing that was often considered with many different elements against demons in Slavic mythology. And so if you would tie that into the horse's braid or put them in your house as well, that the ribbons were meant to ward off demons as well. So in the Frostmarked Chronicles, my fantasy series, the Zmora makes a very early and important appearance in the first book, A Dagger in the Winds. One of our main protagonists, Václav, has a very important fight with a Zmora that determines a lot about his future in the story, and also he learns a lot about his soul along the way. And also Attilia has fights with them as well, and there's connections and learning about how the Zmora are hinting at something else that is happening to demons within this fantasy world. I won't reveal more, but just know that there are plenty of interesting demons throughout the story. That's all I have for you on this Slavic Saturday. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I come out with these videos every Saturday.